to highlight Native American voices and cultures. The second Saturday series is a central piece to the special exhibition, Alcatraz, Perspectives 50 Years Later. During the public health closure of Alcatraz, much of the exhibit has been uploaded to the National Park Service Alcatraz Red Power 50 website and can be viewed online. Today's event highlights the work of Injunuity, who bring Native American issues to the world of animated short films. Please join us again next Saturday when we honor the role of Indigenous women during the occupation and the Red Power movement with a panel moderated by original occupier and founding member of the Indian of All Tribes, Dr. Lenata Warjack. The National Park Service thanks the panelists, the viewers, and the San Francisco Public Library for participating in this event. Anissa.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it. And thank you, NPS and Alcatraz, our friends and our soulmates. We have totally enjoyed our summer with you and look forward to more programming. All right, and I know we don't see you out there, but we know you are beautiful people and we appreciate you being here today and our SFPL virtual library. And we welcome you to the unceded land of the Ohlone tribal people. We acknowledge the many Ramaytush Ohlone tribal groups and families as the rightful stewards on the lands on which we reside and work. SFPL encourages you to learn more about Native culture and land rights and is committed to hosting events that provide educational resources available on topics such as land rights, Bay Area tribal communities, and first-person culture. We also want to acknowledge the painful situation our country is in with Black Lives Matter and know that the library does not stand as a neutral institution and that we stand behind Black Lives Matter and working towards ending systemic racism and working towards equity and just becoming better human beings all around. And the way libraries do that, of course, is by providing factual and lots of useful information and a ton of reading lists. So as soon as the program gets rolling, I'll put a link in the chat box and send a follow-up email that has a bunch of those amazing resources, lots of great things on land rights and lots of great lists on Black Lives Matter and some other great websites and resources. I'll also be linking to our panelists today. And so Steve did mention our upcoming events we have coming up with today's Red Power. Upcoming, we have our August author will be Virgie Tovar. And tomorrow we have a community member presenting African American culture from 1951 to 1980. The photos are amazing. I helped this member scan the photos and they're just astoundingly beautiful. So still time to register for that. And you can always check out our events on our website. Let's see, some other announcements I want to quickly point it out was the census is very important. Please take your census. Did you know that California has not lost a seat in the House of Representatives for over 170 years? If people do not take their census, we have a chance of losing a seat. So it's super important. Also, it brings in $20,000 to your community per census count. And you know, before I was like census, whatever, every 10 years, but I'm hugely crazy passionate about it now that I got involved in this project and tell everybody to take their census. It is so important. And it's super easy. It's in nearly every single language imaginable. You can do it by phone, you can do it by computer, you can do it when they come knocking on your door. But you know, don't be afraid and don't not do it. Everybody counts, babies count, we all count. So please make sure it happens. Mask up, everybody, please. The other call, wear some masks. You're not, you know, it's not about you, it's about everybody else. So protect everybody, be better. And the city does have free COVID testing, sf.gov/citytestsf. You just stick your nose right out your car window and they get you. 2 days later, you have your test back. Encourage it for all. I also noticed in Mission every Wednesday and Saturday, free testing at 24th Street BART Station. So there's lots of opportunities out there to get tested. Let's get it and let's get it out of this. All right, some house cleaning for today's Zoom panel. We would like you to put your questions and answers in the question and answer box. The chat you can use for other chatting. I will put in some links as we talk. I'll be taking notes. Should some resources pop up that our panelists talk about, I'll put those in the notes. I will put the link to today's notes, and you'll get a follow-up email. By the way, I'm Anissa Milady. I am one of the librarians working virtually at San Francisco Public Library. We miss you all, and we love you all. And now I'm going to introduce you to our panelists for today's program, Team Injunuity. And they're gonna show us some films, and we're gonna discuss their films. And I got to see, I think I've seen them all now. Yesterday was a fun work day. So films from the Native American perspective. We have Adrian Baker, director and producer, Tane Ross, director of animation, and Manny Lieras, producer. All right, I am going to mute myself and hide myself, and it is Team Injunuity all the way. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrian Baker, and I'm the director and producer of Injunuity. We've been working on this for a long time, and we can talk about process or whatever you guys want to talk about, after the film, but just wanted to introduce myself.
Hi, I'm Tane Ross, and I'm the director of animation for Injunuity. And I've been working in animation for a while, but this is definitely the most heartwarming and important work I've done in my career, and I'm very proud to be here for Injunuity, and thank you for inviting us to present.
Yate Shie Manny Lieras, Yinxie. My name is Manny Lieras. I come from both the Navajo and Comanche nations. I'm a producer for Injunuity. Really excited to be here with you all today to share these masterpieces that we've developed as a team, using the voices of real people, friends, extended family, all throughout the nation to highlight kind of our existence through our own narrative. Before we get started with our film, I'm also a singer. I sing actually out at Alcatraz 2 times a year, usually on Indigenous Peoples Day in October, and then on the day commonly referred to as Thanksgiving, or in our community, sometimes they talk about it as Thanksgiving in November. I sing with the All Nations Drum Group, and I want to just sing a quick song of encouragement for all of us doing the work to, again, provide accurate narratives within our communities that have been marginalized through colonization and other forms of oppressive governmental society, what are considered norms now. So bear with me as I do this before we start our show. For me and for our communities, our Indigenous communities, song and dance are one of those things that are referred to with high regard and reverence. And so I want to just provide that for us to kind of set the tone for today. This song that I'm going to sing was composed by a friend of mine named Junior Keyswood out of Hogback, New Mexico, right near the Shiprock area. And it's just a song of encouragement, a song of self-empowerment. And so here we go. Oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hi, 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 oh, hi, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hey, hi, hi, oh, ho, hey, hi, oh, hi, 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 oh, hi, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hey, hi, oh, hi, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, hey, hi, oh, hi, 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 oh, hi, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hey, hi, hi, oh, ho, hey, hi, oh, hi, 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 oh, hi, hi, ah, hey, oh, hey, hey, hi, oh, hi, hi, hey, oh. So we hope you enjoy these films that we've produced, and we're more than welcome to answer any questions that you all have. Please put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them after the show.
All right, so I guess we're gonna start the show. This was originally produced in 2013. It's won numerous awards, and it's still playing every year especially during Native American Heritage Month all over the place. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Does anybody want to add anything else before we start?
Yeah, it's a 30-minute piece made up of a number of shorts that are about different themes. So at the end of the 30 minutes, we'll do a QA. And then after that, if we have time, we'll show some more recent episodes or shorts along the same lines that we've done over the last couple of years. Ready?
Let's start.
All right,
the show.
let's go to next. Yeah.
And thanks for coming, everyone.
There's no sound for me. You might need to unmute yourself.
Just did.
No, and Anissa, who's presenting? Can you please back up a couple slides? We could hear that, which is great. Yep.
Yashoda North E Hayov Kalbide Badawi Nigot Dahnat Aye Konehifne No dos dobison de sos na bayit kaya mit achni ego deinig nich in dahne pahenile ahul ago benening da bazi da It's ours in day. Don't she a son person go that night out Nikikea big iggy at Honjo.
Language is very important. Language is a definer of our culture, and our language is our culture. It's very important that the essence of the language, native languages in particular, need to be preserved because they're so expressive and they come from a very rich history. A time before contact, a time before calendars and clocks and existence of the modern world. As Indian people, we have become acculturated but not assimilated. We have not assimilated because we still operate from our value system. We still operate from that hard wiring that we have. Our cultural imperative is to understand where we came from and to be connected to that past and that part of us. The language offers that bridge between the past and today. So it's important that we keep that connection.
I know some Eskimo. I've learned some of my language because my grandma is Eskimo from Alaska. She lived in a really small village. Really, there's one school in the whole village. There's one post office in the whole village, and they're like the only 2 buildings that have running water. It seems to me like only the elders speak the language up there. It's the same how what happened on reservations, like another culture came there. It was the Lutheran church, and they were like, oh, you can't speak your language in school, you can't speak your language in church. They almost made it to where people were ashamed to speak their language, and I think because of that, there was a generation somewhere where they didn't teach their kids to speak.
If they offered Navajo as a language in an urban city, I think that would be an honor, actually. With technology, that's how our students relate to globalization. And they feel like the need to interact with kids abroad here in the States as well as internationally. But I think if they saw a program where a Diné language is being offered as a course of study like Spanish or French, I think that would perk their interest, because now we see some of them that are still a little bit ashamed to speak their language, and I think that started back when boarding schools were here on the reservation. For our generation and for those to come after, we have to preserve those teachings, whether it be written, be through a video, through YouTube, we have to preserve it.
In only 500 years, there's been so much destruction to our environment. And that's because of that orientation towards value, that orientation towards individualism as opposed to relationship and community. There was such a diversity of life, and our understanding of our impact on the environment, also our understanding of our impact 7 generations out. There was no way we were going to evolve into a culture that was clear-cutting forests and that we're stripping mountains of gold, using arsenic to get into the vein of a mountain.
We do practice different types of stewardship, and it's sort of built in, and I don't think I realized that that practice was defined in a certain way. It had political terms like environmentalism until I moved away from home. I met other students and other individuals who were considered activists in different things, but their type of environmentalism is different from mine, simply because it's not political for me. It's a way of life. It's about preserving a system, an environmental life system that continues to sustain our people.
as Native nations are taking that place of leadership again, and those Native nations are coming together and talking about how are we going to help the earth? How are we going to resume our roles as caretakers of Turtle Island? That personal responsibility in our traditional teachings is going to lead us in that direction.
The sunshine is coming. The sunshine is coming.
About 12 years ago, that's when we first started doing the community organizing work with Indian people organizing for change. And we started getting phone calls from contractors and from carpenters. People tell me, hey, there's a burial over here. Did you know that they found this over there? So in Brentwood, we found out that they moved 366 bodies, 13 bodies in San Jose. The big Emeryville project, where it's on top of one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. It was 600 feet in diameter, 30 feet high. It was on an 1859 survey map. As people were coming into the Bay Area, it was a point of reference. So it was a huge shell mound. Emeryville decided, that was during the .com era, and they decided that they wanted to bring commerce into Emeryville. And by doing that, they were going to build this mall. We asked them to clean it up and to leave it as it is, leave it as a sanctuary for Native people, for Ohlone people, talk about the history. They decided no, that's not what they wanted to do. And pretty soon they were pulling up hundreds of bodies. When they piled in to put the movie place in and where the garage is, they piled through a baby cemetery. And so what they decided to do was to put that horrible little tiny mound with the metal basket on it, and that's supposed to represent thousands of years of my ancestors.
Smoke belched forth, falling ruinous upon the land, falling ruinous upon the land.
It's so crazy. Like, you look at a dollar and it's just like, people die over this, you know, over this little piece of paper. People die over this stuff, you know, and people go through like so many like horrible things just to get this, you know what I mean? So it's just like something I don't want on me, but at the same time I gotta depend on it, you know? So it's kind of hard. Because that's the thing, you gotta depend on it, so you gotta like want it, you know what I mean? Because you gotta pay rent, you gotta pay bills and do this and do that, but I kind of hate having to do that, you know what I mean? And it's like hard to realize that not too long ago money didn't exist, you know, like 300 years ago, 400 years ago, like they didn't really have like paper money, you know what I mean? They traded and did things like that, and the dollar wasn't important, it wasn't significant at all. Like if you had that, then they'd be like, what is that, paper? Like what am I gonna do with that? Modern thinking is just so like different. It's just run through everything right now and do what you can now, because who cares what's going on in 100 years? You're not gonna be here anyways, you know, and just do what you gotta do. Let's make that money now. We need gas, all right, well, let's go find somebody that has oil and just go take that real quick. And just like they did when they were settlers, you know, there's gold over here, all right, let's go get it. There's people over here, well, let's kill them off and, you know, we'll get to the gold. It's all good. When it comes to money, for me at least, my focus isn't necessarily, oh, I need to get this money so I can go buy a car, I can go buy a house, I can go buy that. I'm thinking I need to get this money so I can buy land back for my people.
Raise babies.
Hey, man.
Hey.
What you up to?
Mom just threw me out for playtime. I'm feeling tipsy, man.
Yeah, you look pretty tore up there, man.
I'm the one that's supposed to be on the bottle, man. My mom's been on the bottle this whole time, man. Enabler, man.
I think you'll be alright. Just crawl it off.
Yeah, you're probably right. What's wrong with you?
Oh, man. You know, I'm kind of ashamed. You know that dog that gave birth to all those puppies behind Uncle Billy's house? We were fighting over a piece of meat, and she just slapped me up and sent me off crying.
You should be ashamed, but only for not taking back what's yours, man. This is what's wrong with us as a people. We need to take back what's ours. Man, let's go get your stuff back.
Yeah, let's go do that. Hold on, let me get my bottle here real quick.
Pop, you have pop in your bottle? This is what I'm talking about. This is still poison in your body, coursing through your veins, man, making you all messed up. You're gonna keep doing that, you're gonna end up like Fat Chris. You wanna end up like Fat Chris? Look at him.
Hey, boys, how you doing? Let me hang in with you. Here, let me get up here. You know what? I'm just gonna sit here. You guys go on ahead. I'll catch up with you later.
I'll leave the pop behind. Excuse me, Mrs. Tittles.
Oh, here we go. It's the Savage Patch Kids.
I don't know if you remember me, but yesterday you took my food and
No, I remember you, and yesterday you took my food. I have puppies to feed, okay? That's why you got slapped.
That doesn't give you the right to take food from an Indian man.
And what is this, your little baby backup bodyguard or something? When's the last time either one of you had a bath? You look dirty.
Last week, but that's not the point.
I don't even like taking baths.
I can smell that.
Well, I can smell you. You smell like a mountain lion peed on you.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Brothers, you mustn't fight amongst each other. We are all related here. You humans, you must relearn to respect the animal nation. And you, Mrs. Tittles, look at the example you're setting for this next generation of puppies. I expected more from a Tittles. Here, take this tobacco, and may there be peace between our two nations. Ohechitu, I have spoken.
Hey, you boys. What are you boys doing down here playing with these dirty res dogs?
We are not merely dirty res dogs. We are a proud nation.
Holy man, some talking dogs. Let's get the heck out of here.
There is a story about a total eclipse at the time of its creation. And at that time, if a person was killed by someone in another clan or in another nation, then you were bound to go and kill or capture at least one person from the group that did that. Hiawatha was a skilled speaker, speech maker, and so on. And he met up with Daganawida, who some people say was a stutterer, but who had all these great ideas. And in one version of the story, they joined forces to try and stop the blood feuds. They then enunciated the Great Law. there is significant influence on the development of American government by Iroquois Haudenosaunee people. The direct influences are the idea of separation of powers, sovereignty in the people, that's we the people. Also, of course, the notion of federalism. The great law of peace, maintain peace within the Six Nations, but also developed a model for defense of the Six Nations from external powers. And that, of course, was very interesting to the 13 colonies. Benjamin Franklin published a book called Indian Treaties. In them were speeches by Haudenosaunee and other Native American leaders about peace, about government, and so on. In one instance, in a treaty in Pennsylvania, an Iroquois chief said, you should think seriously about uniting along the lines like us. Then at the Albany Plan of Union in 1754, Franklin uses that as a model and develops the first plan for the union of the colonies. There is a group of Iroquois chiefs that come to Philadelphia, and they are actually sleeping on the second floor of Independence Hall. John Hancock is presiding over the Continental Congress at the time, and the Iroquois had been invited earlier to come down and view this new Continental Congress, and after looking for several weeks, they then make John Hancock the Great Tree. In 1785, when there's great frustration in the government and with the Articles of Confederation, three guys say we need to go and examine the Iroquois more closely and then bring that back, and maybe we can construct a new constitution. Those three guys are Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe. Jefferson becomes the ambassador to the French, and with Monroe, Madison goes and he rejoins his friend the Grasshopper, who's an Oneida chief who he had known for a long time.
Gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender, it feels like they're all boxes and categories that you have to fit into, and they can't change. When I learned about being Two-Spirit, it felt more natural to me. It felt like it acknowledged more than the surface of somebody's identity. I feel like it encompasses also a way of carrying yourself in the world.
What was working before colonization is this practice of passing on of, stories that allowed for people to learn about each other, to appreciate each other, and to live in a way that everyone felt like they were safe and belonged.
For me personally, I wasn't, loud and proud. I was very subdued about it. I never really came out until I left into the city. But when I came back, I'm okay with myself. At one point, gay and lesbians were revered in Navajo culture. It's just that the influence of Christianity really skewed that view of homosexuality. It's a sacredness.
Growing up here in the Bay Area, I saw other LGBT kids, and I couldn't relate to them, or like I wanted to, but I didn't know how. But when I started going to Native boarding schools, and I saw Two-Spirits, and I was like, yeah, okay, I get it now. That's where I belong. That's my place. So I started to come out. I didn't know that I could be an athlete. I didn't know I could be an intellectual. I didn't know that I could embrace all the good things that I knew about me. So my confidence level, it started to peak.
Young people who are just exploring who they are, I want you to remember that there are some tribes out there that didn't even call you a specific gender until you decided what that is. I want you to know that you're empowered and that anything that you may go through, you can overcome. You have the strength, and that you're valuable and you belong here.
In this world, it's all about getting, and I think in the old world, the way that I was told by the elders is that it's all about giving. How much can you give to other people? How generous can you be?
We don't just pray for ourselves. We don't just pray for our families or the people we know. We pray for everybody in the world and all of nature. And the songs that we sing in our ceremonies when we have our renewal of life at the beginning of the year around winter solstice, that's for you too. It's for everybody.
I would say America needs to take a look at the Native value structure, Native value system. In our Native way, in our Native practice, we took only what we needed to feed our families. We didn't believe in excess. We didn't believe in accumulating material. We didn't believe in stockpiling. We didn't believe in hoarding and the things that we see with other societies around the world.
A lot of what America wants us to do is to not live inside of ourselves, to not be who we are, so that it can go on with its agenda. But that if we just stop and really focus on the wisdom that lies inside of us and couple that with what we know about true history of the U.S., that I think that will actually lead us to a different space. A lot of movement, change, transformation, revolution will happen from that space.
Be in a good way with everything, and everything you need will be provided you. But the moment you start taking and not giving back, taken without ceremony and without prayer, then that's when it all starts falling apart. Your world starts crumbling. America's got to realize that.
We're all living here on Mother Earth together, and it's going to take all of us together to change things. And so, since we haven't listened to Indigenous people, it's time. It's time to listen.
see the dawn of a new bright morning. Made it through the storm and the past been storming. I can hear the youth and the elders calling, looking for a way to reclaim what's stolen. But I see the bright light off in the distance, spread through the land with the cultural resistance. It's too late, assimilate to the system, or lay your head down on the mountain and listen. What it said, all your material ain't real life. You can't take it to your burial in real life. What it say, all your possessions ain't real life. It ain't real life. Push those obsessions away. Make noise if you wanna, and don't you ever get back in the corner. Keep your hands clean from the dirt and the drama, and you stand free from the hurt and the karma. What it say? Make noise if you wanna, and don't you ever get back in the corner. Keep your hands clean from the dirt and the drama, and you stand free from the hurt and the karma.
Major funding for Injunuity was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Great, thank you. I love seeing all the names at the end. You can see all the people who contributed their opinions and their thoughts and their stories to the show. And some of them we didn't use, but we still want to acknowledge their time and their energy and appreciate their contributions, which you could see at the end as well.
I also want to give a huge shout out to Audio Pharmacy, who created all the music for us. Ross Kadee and his cohorts of musicians are just amazing, and their music just fit with everything we were doing. So when Manny introduced me to Ross, I knew we were going to work together, and it's been great working with them. Also Jesse Hernandez, who is our lead illustrator. So most everything you see drawn up front is, yeah, he drew that behind Tane as well. but he's just an amazing artist, and he works, he works with the San Francisco Giants, Oakland A's. He does all kinds of stuff all over the place. You've probably seen his work and you didn't even know it. That's how ubiquitous and widespread his work is. And he's just a really amazing artist. And again, Manny introduced me to him too. When we first started the project, we were just trying to get our team together, and it all kind of worked out great from the get-go. So where do we go from here?
Why don't you talk about the process and how we assembled the people and did the recordings and.
Well, this process has been a long process. I mean, it started really like 20 years ago when we were doing another animation. Tane and I had our own animation house in San Francisco. We were working in the first wave of web animation, and we did a project with a group called Wild Brain. It was about taking real audio from the streets of people in San Francisco and turning them into these funny cartoons. And I thought, I want to do this with my native people, and I want to talk about real issues, and I want to make it educational. And it took a long time to get that going. Got a grant from Vision Maker Media, who's been amazingly helpful through the whole thing, and through another grant through ITVS, who produces most of the major documentaries you see in America today. And they were great. And then, when I had the idea, I brought it to Manny, and we started talking about it almost immediately. And we knew we had something, from the first moment. So the process turned into what we did is our first step is we go out and we get the interviews, and that involves us traveling around a lot. We would go on road trips all over the place from Southwest, Seattle, Minneapolis, all over the place just to get audio and interview people. And to me, that's the funnest part of the process, was just getting out there and meeting everybody and doing the hard work. Plus, we got to see a lot of the country. We got to meet so many amazing folks out there who were helpful and wonderful and fed us and made us laugh. And it's just been an amazing journey. And Manny's the one who gets everybody on board. And when we get to a place in the city, he starts making his phone calls and doing his thing. And pretty soon we've got all these interviews lined up, and we've got this amazing audio from all these amazing people. After we get the audio, we come back, and my job is to cut the audio and kind of make the screenplay, if you will, or the script of where we're going to go. We all sit down together and decide what kind of like tone we're looking for in a certain piece, what the mood we want, and then
isn't that where kind of Audio Pharmacy's contribution is? Yeah,
that's where I sit down and we kind of piece together the music along with the audio. And that creates the audio background of the whole thing with the music and the vocal audio. And then we storyboard, and that's a lot of Tane and I kind of locking ourselves in a room for a week
and arguing
and hashing it out and finding the best solutions for every moment that you see on screen. And that's what it takes.
I mean, what's interesting about that process is that the ideas are inspired by what the person says, as well as our own kind of point of view and the music. We take a lot of cues from what Roz and Audio Pharmacy did, as far as sometimes if it has this kind of technical sound in the background, we're like, oh, well, maybe we'll have this kind of technical, bring that technology into the storyline and things like that. So it really is a collaboration with Audio Pharmacy and the people who we interviewed.
Right, and so then we would take that sound design, and we'd create the storyboards, and then we would create our shot lists and everything and all the drawings we needed, and we'd hand it off to Jesse Hernandez and Jamar Logan, and there are two illustrators, and then they would do their thing, and we would send them out with an idea, and they would always come back with something that was better than we imagined it. So then we would have all these drawings, and then that's when they get all processed and put into the computer. And then that's when Tane takes over for the final leg of the process, which is the animation.
The long, slow leg.
The long slog of animation. And that's when everything gets put together, everything becomes in motion. All the pieces just kind of fit together on the screen, and we see what we get. And usually we're really, really pleased with what we get at the end. And, so I've been really pleased with the process. All the work we've done, everybody works really hard on our project, and we get the best out of everybody, because I think we're coming at it from the right place in terms of our heart and where our minds are going. And that's really the process. And then, luckily we had somebody on board like Vision Maker and ITVS who took care of all of the kind of distribution modes that happen when you have a film like this. What do you do with it? So they're the ones who would take over from there and got it on television, and and through PBS it's been on on PBS numerous times. And I'm really proud of the team and everything that we've done together, and we're still doing. And that's my shtick about the process. Anybody want to add anything in? Manny, Tane, anything?
I just see a question from Felipe, and it says, could this video be used for teaching in post-secondary studies? And if so, what are the requirements before presenting this video to students? And I would say that absolutely this series can be shown, or each piece individually can be shown for tons of different components to enhance folks' understanding and education. We also do have a curriculum that accompanies some of the pieces, as well as on our website and other places. There's drop down words. You should go to Vision Maker.
You should go to Vision Maker Media, though, if you want to get the package. They have the whole curriculum and film downloadable. You can also just watch them individually and teach them in class if you'd like. You have my permission. They're on YouTube. They're currently being taught all over the place. So in all kinds of high schools and colleges all over the place already. So it's already happening.
I'm just putting that in the chat for people. Vision Maker Media and Injunuity.org. Right.
I think somebody also just put a question in the chat about, do you all have a favorite book by a Native author or about Native people that you can recommend?
My favorite one right now is Braiding Sweetgrass. What is the author's name? Robin Kimmerer?
Kimmerer.
Yes, it's amazing. We have the audiobook. It's my daughter's, one of her favorite books. It just talks about, it's about our relationship to the land, our relationship to each other. It's an amazing, amazing book.
Yeah, she's a botanist and a scientist, and she does a great job at bringing in the science and the Native teachings, as well as poetry, and kind of synthesizes it into a really beautiful point of view.
And what's Tommy Orange's book?
They're There by Tommy Orange, who's a Native American guy born and raised in Oakland, California, who writes a book about urban narrative and the Native experience. It's a really good book. My favorite book right now to read with my daughters is a book called Bow Wow Powwow, just because my daughters are both powwow dancers and they miss it a lot. And so there's just a really cool kids book called Bow Wow Powwow.
Yeah, and my daughter really enjoyed the Birch Bark House, which is a series of
Louise Erdrich.
Yeah, and they're beautiful, but very like real books. It's not light. There's some very strong, but very important themes in them.
What else we got?
I can add, it looks like somebody asked give us titles and authors. I can put the ones we just mentioned in the chat. Manny, what was yours called again?
Bow Wow Powwow. It's amazing.
And that's for kids, right?
I see a question asking how did we find the stories, and it's basically we go by what's happening in front of us in our world, and we know that what's happening in Indian country transfers to what's happening in America at large. So we usually would get the stories by what we see in front of us, and we know that there's problems everywhere. And so that's kind of one of the reasons we want to make this film, is because we need some solutions. We don't need more fighting, or we don't need more problems. So we just kind of get the stories they kind of pop up in front of us. We kind of feel our way through it. We would do interviews, and like the story Buried with that has to do with the Ohlone shell mounds. I remember we were interviewing Karina Gould, and she just started talking about the shell mounds as like an aside. It wasn't really part of the interview, but when she started talking about it, I knew that was something I wanted to grab onto, because it was something that was important. So I went with her little side story, and that's turned into an entire piece by itself. So, they kind of just organically happen. We really wanted to do a two-spirit piece because we knew that was a different way of looking at your entire community, who's accepted, how we love each other, things like that. I don't know. I mean, me and Manny would talk a lot about like what we were going to do, and it's kind of just what's in front of us.
Yeah, and the Great Law of Peace was something that you kind of found the native expert who had the story, and you went out and got that from him.
Yeah, I had to fly to Buffalo for that one. But yeah, that was a great story about how our government is connected to the Iroquois government, and how our Constitution is frameworked from the Great Law, and how we as Americans owe a great debt to the Iroquois for creating this framework for government, hundreds of years before anybody arrived here from Europe. So that was all in place before anybody got here.
And then the final piece, the one that was called Ingenuity, that concluded the entire show, that one was pieces of other shows, just some great comments that people had made, and we formed it into kind of a conclusion, a way to end the show by, talking about kind of like this message to America, like what we can learn from Indigenous people and histories and things. And that one was definitely kind of piecemeal, but as far as like, we didn't have a plan for it, but we had so much great audio and from the interviews that we could find these great nuggets of wisdom. We're able to get it into the show.
I think that's a great segue into this next question regarding, how does Canada treat its Indigenous people versus the United States? And I would say that it's really similar. I think sometimes we may receive messages down here in the States that Canada is doing a better job. Yet we all saw that the I Don't Know More movement started in Canada. There's a lot of different things that are happening in Canada that we also just don't know about. There was like a public apology regarding residential schools, which are the equivalent of the boarding schools that folks down here were sent to. And so, yeah, there's a lot of just systematic oppression all over the place, whether it's here in Canada or in Canada, United States, or Mexico or other southern countries, with how they treat their Indigenous populations. And so I think that there's a lot of research that can be done to kind of shed light on some of these things. I think even now, as communities are starting to gather and collaborate, there's this new phenomenon that has kind of started here in the States, is BIPOC acronym, Black and Indigenous People, or Black and Indigenous People Color. And, I think that there's a lot of collaboration that can be done across communities to really kind of not necessarily repair, but to impact the future as we move forward. Nothing we do now, or nothing these governments do now, can ever undo those wrongs of massacre, of desecration of sacred sites. But there's a lot of movement that can be done to ensure that culture is never erased, and that these narratives are properly spoken of, whether it's here in the United States, in Canada, like I said, in Mexico, or any other country for that matter.
And I guess maybe that might segue us into maybe showing a newer piece. And we might do you want to show the mission first? Because we are talking about narratives. And we did a piece called The Mission that has to do with, right now there's a lot of, let's pull down the statues. And in California, Father Sarah is one of the big targets of those campaigns. And so we did a piece a few years ago that had to do with that experience of the California natives and how they were, basically put into the mission system, which was, in one sense, just a slave camps. So, we met with some people who are direct descendants of those families that were in the mission system, and we did a piece about it. And we, since we don't have any video of those times, we had to kind of add in our own kind of visual story behind it. So that's what we did. It took a lot of storyboarding time to do that. But the two speakers are great. And so should we just show the mission? Is that, sure. Let's show it, and hope you guys like it.
My family is a direct descendant of Carmel Mission. My 7th great grandmothers were enslaved along with their children. Most of the men in the family were either dead of disease or dead of war. And once you're in the mission, you're stripped of your clothes, your religious items, your language. You're pretty much stripped of everything you've ever known, and you're thrown into a culture you've never known in your life. They call them concentration camps in Europe. We call them the missions here. I mean, it's the same thing. They had serial numbers. My people had serial numbers. They were flogged and whipped and killed for no reason. My people were killed for no reason too, just for their simple beliefs and culture. Most of the resistance was like running away. I mean, Mission Dolores in San Francisco, 200 people just fled the mission in 1 year. And then the following year, another 200 people fled the mission. They weren't these savages that just wanted to be saved by God or wanted Jesus in their life by forced convert. They resisted it with every inch of their body and literally running away, trying to run as far as possible, clearing to Miwok lands just to get away from what was going on.
The first generation of my family that's documented to come into the missions was a woman named Jakbakme and a man named Poilemja. And Jakbakme, she be my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. It's a 6th great grandmother, and Poilemja would be my 6th great grandfather. Poilemja, he came in what likely was a forced conversion, because when he came from a village that was hostile against the Spanish, not just against the Spanish, but against any Indian who sided with the Spanish and who adopted the Catholic ways. So a few years later, his wife came. They were already married in the traditional Indian way, but they had to be remarried as Catholics at Mission Dolores. After they were baptized, they were forced to stay there. People didn't know that they couldn't go home, and they were forcibly brought back and punished and whipped, and they were enslaved in these places. There was resistance that happened at just about every single mission, if not all of them, in California. I mean, our ancestors were living perfectly fine here for thousands of years. They weren't happy that the Spanish were coming here. People were going through an occupying force coming in and taking land that wasn't theirs. Of course there's going to be resistance. To me, the heroism of all of this is how people, when they were going through a time when it seemed like the world was collapsing, how they refused to give up everything that they cared about. Their language, their religion, their stories, their values that they had, which still continue on even to this day. There's this quote that I love in Chochenyo. Makperetska hinweb irek nuhu ayerinihimu makpuishik maisha. The ground turned to stone, but below and above, the world of the spirit remains. If you look around, the ground literally is stone. It's concrete, it's paved over. But I know as long as we have that connection, our own spiritual connection to the land, our own connection to each other, then we connect with our ancestors, and we connect to something that's bigger, and they can never take that away from us.
So that was the mission, which has a double meaning, of course. It's about the mission system, but also the mission to save everybody in the mission. So that was the mission.
Are there any questions about that one?
Yeah.
So the pieces that you're seeing now have been made in the last couple of years. And, we're showing them at film festivals and whatnot.
Yeah, and that was a fun one to make. Do you want to show another one? We can show, which one do you guys want to show? Do you guys want to show the Source of the Wound? Source of the Wound is, that one. It's about the boarding school experience. This was brought to us by an outside entity from a woman named Ramona Beltran from the University of Denver. And she wanted to make something about the boarding school experiences. So she brought us on board, and it turned into an Injunuity piece. And then we brought in Helen Wakazu from the Bay Area, who is a Navajo, and she had her own boarding school experience, which she talks about. And it was just amazing to meet her, to work with her. And she's just an amazing person. This film won Best Animation at American Indian Film Festival. Was it last year? Was it 2019? Or either 2019 or, yeah, it was 2019. This film has been received very well. So should we just play it? Let's go for it.
Historical trauma is defined as a collective and cumulative wounding across generations that results from massive catastrophic events targeting a community. So historically traumatic events would be forced removal, relocation, boarding schools, slavery. There's almost uncountable massacres in the United States against Indian people, and that doesn't even begin to count what happened across the border, across the many borders. There's a whole body of science now that's beginning to show that the experiences of our environments actually become embodied. They can impact the genetic material surrounding our DNA. So the trauma is held personally as well as collectively, and it can be passed on through the generations.
I remember the day that I was taken to Greyhound in Crown Point, New Mexico. I was 12 years old. Whole line of buses were in line when we went to the trading post, and that's where they put us in a bus and didn't tell us where we were going. I was crying, my mother was crying, my dad was angry, and I know that my mom had the roughest time with that. A lot of people that were there bringing their children were upset, and I was scared, confused. All of us were, and they took us. To this day, I remember my mom standing there crying. And we end up in a place called Inner Mountain, and that was in Utah. We were told that the way you live and the way you believe is not acceptable by us. We need to cut your hair. You cannot speak Navajo anymore. You're going to learn how to speak English. I had long hair, and it got cut. The sadness that I felt, it was painful. I couldn't sleep. I was scared that something would happen while I'm asleep. I felt like I lost everything in terms of my family, my relatives, and I was in the middle of this place where even if I was to run away, I didn't know which way to go. I remember some people hanging themselves in the dormitory and things like that. Some kids ran away and didn't make it home. A lot of people got sick. I remember a few times that I was in trouble only because I opened my mouth to say something in Navajo. But you know, that did not affect me physically, but affected me emotionally, because I began to think, like, what's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. But no matter what they said to me, I knew who I was. The teaching from my dad was very strong, to the point where I think that kept me going all these years. At some point, you have to make up your mind, are you going to be in pain the rest of your life? And you got to search around, how do I get rid of it? There's ways to do that, and a lot has to do with the spirituality. You'll never forget what happened, but you'll be in charge of that healing.
We actually have our own mechanisms to interrupt that intergenerational transmission of trauma in a way that gets at the source of the wound. Narrative is one of the ways that we interrupt that direct line of the trauma to the outcome. And story for Indigenous people is in our way of being. So we dance, we pray, and we speak, and we tell our stories. And we create things new. We define what being Indigenous is now. Who we are is completely up to us.
Right.
So that's the source of the wound. And, you know, today it has a lot of relevance because of what's going on the border right now with family separations. And that's kind of one of the things we want to do, is make something that talked about how, you know, these governments have been separating families for hundreds of years. It's not just today. And that's just one part of the Native experience in the United States is this family separation, this removal, if you will. Anybody else have anything to say about it? Any questions coming in? Oh, I wanted to say, I saw a question from Jackson about how that mission reminded her or him of Toi Purina, and we actually talked a lot about Toi Purina during the making of that piece. I would love to make a piece about Toi Purina, who was a warrior and medicine woman down from the LA area way back in the day, who led a insurrection and a revolt against the missions down there. But yeah, so Toi Purina was definitely on our minds when we made it. And to me, she's a hero, and I would love to make a piece about her.
So if anybody out there wants to fund that, please send us an email.
Here's our Venmo.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's my PayPal.
PayPal, Venmo.
Uh-huh.
He would take it all.
Right. Any other questions coming in you guys want to talk about, or did we want to do, what time is it? Do we have time?
Just real quick, to also just touch on the work of Helen Wakazu. So Helen Wakazu now is the director of the Friendship House Association of San Francisco, which is a substance abuse recovery organization for our Native American population throughout the city of Oakland, the city of San Francisco. But they also have collaborations with the Native American Health Centers, who are founded here in Oakland and have branches in San Francisco and other places. They also have a unique relationship with several different tribes throughout California and throughout the nation to provide substance abuse treatment for their tribal members. And so kind of what she says in the end of that piece is that through spirituality and through culture, that's where we find our healing. She's not just a person who's talking that talk, but also walking that walk throughout her professional career. So a story about her, you know, I've known Helen since I moved to the Bay Area back in 2004, and I never heard this story from her. And so it's really great to hear this and to be able to share it as another legacy piece of her work and her contribution to making this world a better place.
And one other thing too is just that, you know, you see the rose motif happening in this piece, and And what we do is when we sit down and talk to them, you know, that's one of the things I asked Helen. I said, you know, where's your favorite place to be in this world? And she told me it was in her rose garden. So that's why we wanted to kind of incorporate that for her. And, you know, kind of like that's the place where she says she feels the best and has the most peace. And so that's why we incorporated the roses into the piece. And we also wanted the color red in there for the MMIW movement, that Murdered and Missing Indian Women movement. And that's what the red dress is that Ramona's wearing. That's a nod to that as well. So, and these all tie in together about removal, about people being separated from their families, about, you know, people disappearing. You know, this is all part of the Native experience, and it needs to be seen in a greater light, so it will stop.
It looks like we have a request to have Manny sing us out.
Are we at that time already?
I don't know. Are we?
I really wanted to see the water piece.
Water or salmon? We have
Salmon.
2 more pieces queued up.
I would
Should we
say
see
water.
Water? Okay, so that's slide 24.
Especially just to celebrate that Dakota Access Pipeline has received an official cease and desist and like removal of all their stuff. So yeah, I think it's a great piece to show at this time.
Yeah, and some of these interviews we did get at Standing Rock when we went there during the protests.
Yeah.
As a team.
All right.
When we come into this world, we're surrounded by water. We're graced and comforted by water. For 9 months, we get to have that cloak of water around us. And then when we come out of our mother's womb, we carry that water inside us. Water is our relative. And there's so many ancestors and spirits around water. We have our songs that we sing to bring in the rains. We have our songs to the thunder people, the cloud people, and there's a reciprocity involved. There's a relationship that happens.
Sorry, it looked like we had some technical problems on the last interview, but you could at least read what she was saying on the closed captioning, which was nice.
Yeah, some tech issues. How'd you like it, Manny? You haven't seen that one in a long time, huh?
I've never seen that one.
You've never seen that one?
That's why I was like, can we please see it? It's awesome. I want to hear, like, I want to see it and hear all the audio as well. That was a great piece. I'm so excited about it.
The music's good too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that audio glitch. If there was one, it dropped off on me as well.
Yeah.
So, luckily we had the closed captioning. But,
I read the heck out of it.
Yeah, it read real good.
I tried to even change my voice so that I would sound like some of the people, or at least what I thought.
Like an astronaut.
Yeah.
All right. So are we? Is that? I mean, are we wrapping up here?
I think so.
Does Manny want to sing us out? Is that a real thing?
Yeah. Let's. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah,
and for
I want to
your
thank everybody.
participation, and for giving us some time today.
Yeah, thank you for San Francisco Public Library, and thanks to National Park Service. This has been a great event, and we hope to do it again. Again.
Maybe in person.
Yeah, maybe in person.
Oh, we would welcome that.
Good.
And we have the Corette Theater, the huge screen.
Let's do it.
We want to thank you all. And thank you, Manny, for singing us out.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Hit it, Manny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I got a message in the chat saying that when I sang everybody in, it didn't go through. And so I'll sing the same song. Anyways, in the beginning, I announced that this song is composed by a good friend of mine. His name's Junior Keyswood out of Hogback, New Mexico, near Shiprock, New Mexico, right there on the Navajo reservation. And this song is a song of encouragement. I feel like a lot of the pieces that we put forth are really out there to encourage our Indigenous community to keep up the resiliency and keep pushing to, maintain culture and language and corrective narrative. And I feel like it's also encouragement for people who are non-Indigenous to really hear the messages and to hear what's being said. There's a lot of things in there that talk about like people need to listen. And not necessarily by force, but just by choice to make this world a better place. I believe that these songs carry vibrations that help to do that. And so, and if we were in person, I had my drum with me, I would prove it that these songs have vibration. These tools that we use have vibrations because they affect that water in our bodies that we just heard about in that last piece. Water has the unique ability to absorb sound. And so when sounds they resonate well with you, then it has a opportunity to affect mood, temperament, and all of those things that help us get through our day. And so this song is for everybody who's logged on, for all your families, for your communities, wherever you're at, to continue to do the good work. I can tell that all of you are into doing good work because you've logged on today to hear about our work. And so again, we really want to say thank you. In the Navajo language, that's how we say thank you. It's our expression of gratitude. And here's this song to close us out for this session. We hope and pray that you have a blessed day. Go through it in the best way possible, acknowledging the beauty all around you. Hey, oh, ha, hey, hey, oh. Who's you not asleep? Who's you not asleep? Who's you not asleep? Who's you not asleep? Let you all go in beauty, and you all take care. Thank you for having us.